Isaac Sarason is a skilled hacker formerly employed by British Telecom-Sprint. With his health failing, Isaac did the only thing he could think of. He ran. He found a haven in a working-class district of the city known as Little Russia. There Isaac took on a new name, Ishmael. Within hours of his arrival, he was embroiled in the affairs of a brutal member of Lomidze organized crime family known as Leo. Convinced by a longtime friend, Frankie, to flee from his commitments to the Lomidze family, Isaac found himself hunted by the ruthless Leo. On a rooftop, far from witnesses, Leo murdered Frankie. Only through the use of his skills as a hacker was Isaac able to drive Leo off. Now wounded, alone, and far from help, Isaac depends on the kindness of strangers. What do you do when the only way to save those you love is through the use of proxies? Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware Proxy by Colbytrax. Seven. Hacking is much like being a spy. Movies and books portray your work as exciting and dangerous, while the reality is much more mundane. As a child, I came across a copy of Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. I had heard of it. It was on the list of best classic novels. I was excited. It had not only the word soldier, but also spy in the title. When I read it, I was disappointed. Page after page of reminiscences as a retired spy worked his way through piles of documents and memories of meetings. Where was the action? Where was the car that turned into a submarine? Halfway through, it felt like a series of meetings punctuated with paranoia. Only much later, when I was deep into an unfriendly network, did I realize how exciting raw data could be. I did the same type of work as the spies in the novel. I read through documentation. I staked out ports and nodes. I watched how they react to intrusions. Not mine, but other aggressive hackers who didn't understand the truth of the network. The truth of the network was simple. Knowledge is power. Patience is a virtue. And you could learn a lot from watching others fail. Watching me work, to be honest, was less interesting than watching paint dry. I stood or sat as the mood took me. I paced the room. Sometimes I used the glove controllers. Other times I used the wireless keyboard and mouse that one of Ferran's men brought me. Either way, there was nothing to see. What was I doing? Mostly, I was reading. There's a competition in the world of programmers. The programmer writes a project of brilliant utility. The corporate bosses demand exclusivity of the code. The programmer adjusts the project to make it usable by the right people. But this exclusivity comes with a price, most of it borne by the user in the form of longer development times, platform lock-in, and higher costs. While it might seem obvious that longer development times would directly correlate with higher cost, it does not necessarily follow. A highly exclusive program with a highly aggressive marketing team can force highly ludicrous prices on the public, far above the price additional programmer time would validate. Because most software is peddled to corporations, and purchasing managers tend to base their self-worth on how many joules they spend, the overpriced bloatware finds a market. In addition, most companies are seeking joules of the wealthy, not the mass market. And if there's one thing the wealthy understand, it is that expensive things are better. Through platform lock-in and specialized, read patented, data storage methods, the truly successful software houses create a situation where there is no substitute for their product. That is what economists call a monopoly. Now, in this garden of exclusivity, there are snakes. These snakes are referred to as hackers. To the hacker, exclusivity is not an obstacle. It is a challenge. From the beginning, hackers fought against monopolies. Before there were computers and code, there were phones. The earliest hackers discovered the system of tones the telephone system used to route calls, and used these newfound powers to enjoy a level of communication freedom enjoyed by only the most wealthy. To propagate their skills, they established an underground network of information sharing. In the centuries since those first hackers, technology has advanced by leaps and bounds, but one thing remains constant. Whenever a corporation seeks exclusivity of data tools and resources, the hackers find a way in. An example of the futility of seeking exclusivity can be found in the release of Maximum Metal. Maximum Metal is an immersive environmental game played via the British Telecom-Sprint, BTS for short, network. The game allows thousands of players to compete in a dystopian universe populated by armies of giant robots. It is immensely popular. Over 30 million players fight each other every day on its virtual battlefields. When Maximum Metal launched, a player could log in from any network in the world. When the BTS board discovered that a third of their players lived outside their network in a geographically small area owned by their direct competitor, Zhonggao Yidong Tongxin, ZYT for short, they saw an opportunity to expand their network. BTS, in its wisdom, decided Maximum Metal would be a premium service available only within its network. The thought was, I guess, that players would want to play so bad that they would drop ZYT and demand BTS service. Sounds ridiculous anywhere else in the world, but in the city, the charter allows the transfer of network assets and contracts if the consumers in an area complain loudly enough. Did ZYT lose control of its networks? Of course not. The exclusivity of Maximum Metal was announced a month in advance. There was the normal complaining on message boards, protests against BTS, and a general feeling of hatred toward the telecom industry in general. The night the changeover happened, the number of subscribers went up. Yes, against all expectations, the game gained more players than ever before. How could this be? Simple. A group of hackers discovered the network tags used to differentiate between players in the BTS network and those coming in from outside the network. They created a patch for the player's router, which made it appear to the BTS network filters that the packets originated from within their own network. Someone, a sneaky someone with high-level knowledge about BTS network systems, rendered several thousand man-hours and millions of joules moot. The reason subscriptions increased was much more subtle. BTS has a policy of enforcing the network policies of the nation where a connection originates. Let's take China, for instance. Since the rise of Zhong imperialists, their national firewall attempts to block any information about communism, collectivism, and socialism. Any information which shows the Son of Heaven in a bad light is also blocked. Now let's say you want to form your own little workers' collective in Taoyao. You have Confederates in the city. They use PowerTalk's social network to organize support for your gang of oppressed redshirts. BTS hosts PowerTalk, which is on the no-no list in China. You are a smart individual and know that the eyes of heaven watch for individuals who express an interest in places like PowerTalk. You don't want them to pay you a midnight visit. Therefore, you run through an encrypted proxy server in Argentina. For any network in the world, that would be enough to get you in. But for BTS, it wouldn't work. BTS checks the bits as they come in and sees a small tag within the packet header. The header tells the network your packets originate in China, and you get blocked from PowerTalk. You can't get support. Your little workers' collective dies on the vine. How can they do this? Aren't my packets through the proxy encrypted? They are. But what most people, in this case experts in network operations, don't know is most governments require all network devices to add a region tag to their packets. Telecom providers who are attempting to gain market share as a way of currying favor then use this region tag to block whatever the national firewall misses. The Maximum Metal fix worked off that tag. Someone slipped it into the region in sensitive firmware updates of a half dozen router manufacturers, and the world gained a bit more freedom. Potential customers the world over, blocked by agreements between BTS and their governments, found after the patch they could access the game. Maximum Metal gained access to over 2 billion potential customers, of which 1 in 1,000 became a customer. It was a good day for Maximum Metal. It was a good day for me as well. I held a large position in Metallic Productions, the corporate entity that created Maximum Metal. Hell, even BTS made out like bandits. Their controlling interest in Metallic Productions nearly tripled in value over a 2-week period. I think that was some of my best work ever. That was my hack. I played Maximum Metal way too much at the time. My building was serviced by ZYT. I was part of the takeover region, and even though I worked for BTS, some things are more important than corporate loyalty. Things like a good game, and my bosses not knowing what I did every minute of the day. That is another truth about hackers. Sometimes the best hack is an inside job created by an employee who just wants to play his blasted game in peace. But I digress. In the programming world, there are white hats, corporate security, and black hats, the evil hackers. What most people don't realize is that someone can be a white hat at work and a black hat at home. For me, it was a necessity to own two hats. At work, most of my activity stemmed around finding security flaws and plugging them. The problem with wearing the white hat is familiarity with the project. Every day you're up to your armpits in the bowels of the machine, trying to find a stray line of code that will allow a black hat and Shingar access to the very depths of your customer's systems. You search and search until you are sure it is secure. You post the next release version. Within a day, customer service is flooded with thousands of angry customers all blaming the newest patch for a glut of cyber attacks. What does one do? The honest way would be to examine the data, explore the exploit, send out a rep with a pile of jewels to inspect the machines, and, with luck, bring one back to the office for inspection. The honest way takes a lot of time. Imagine Murray breathing down your back, wondering how, why, and what kind of gross incompetence you've committed when you wrote the code which led to the compromise of customer assets. That was the network admin's job, damn it! You could either work harder or smarter. I took the smarter option. In Malaysia, Ivory Coast, Congo, Chad, Bolivia, and a dozen other latecomers to the global game of I've got technology, there exists a type of business which provides services the civilized world won't allow. The service is anonymous hosting. In a world where corporations analyze every packet passing through their networks for an hour's jump on the latest trend, anonymous hosting is good business. It is such good business that one can track the ups and downs of regional economies based on the enforcement or lack of enforcement of international agreements against these safe havens. If the local economy is in the shitter, you can be sure your host will be around for a long, long time. These are also the places where the black hats host their forums and sell their products. Places where they trade exploits, establish bragging rights, and earn notoriety. In the pirate safe havens, the black hat elite gather at their version of a biker bar. Just as a motorcycle becomes more fun when riding with friends, hacking is more fun when you can share your exploits with others. It is to these boards I went. There are hacker boards anyone can find. These are the types of places where people explain how to break digital rights management, DRM, on movies, books, music, and games. Nice resources, but nothing groundbreaking. Sites like this have been up and running since the first company put a lock on a video game, back when computers were made of flint. The places I wanted were further down the rabbit hole. Places you needed an invite to. Invites which came after one did something a little bit more difficult than pirating a few movies. For these places, you needed to make your bones. In the mafia movies, you didn't become a made man until you put someone in the ground. In the hacker community, you need to do something similar. Just like the made man's hit, it needed to be private and free of law enforcement issues. My entry was relatively easy. I logged into a forum on DRM removal and posted the theory behind the maximum metal hacks. After a month of email exchanges, I found my way in. Over the month, I revealed the entirety of what I had done to a hacker known as Rama. I used BTS security access to secure not only the location of my contact, but the entirety of his life. I didn't tell him about the BTS security assets. I just showed up at his door early one Saturday morning and introduced myself as Tarsus. Rama lived in an alley apartment in Greenwich Village, near Washington Square Park. The morning air held a chill as I introduced myself to Rama and asked if he wanted the source code for the maximum metal hack. Rama got me my invite to the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood forums were in a seedy part of the Ivory Coast net. To get there, you had to use 3 separate proxy servers, know the actual net address digits, have an ID, and a password. On top of all that, you needed to be running the highest level civilian encryption possible. If your encryption failed, the site would route you immediately to the ZYT cell phone accessory store. The Brotherhood forums, where I found everything I needed to look like a Wonder Boy to the suits on the 111th floor. It was a wonderland for someone of my bent. Here were kindred spirits, men and women who'd figured out ways of bypassing the best security money could buy. It was like being in college again, only this time with only the most brilliant students. It was to this place I journeyed. Within the archives of the Brotherhood forums was the information I needed to accomplish the task set to me by Ferran, the freeing of a Class 6 electronics maker. Firmware, Proxy, is the second book in the Firmware pentology. That's 5 books, if you must know. It begins moments after Firmware Hijacked ends. So if you haven't heard or read Firmware Hijacked, this would be a good time to head on over to Colbyjack.net and either download the podcast on the audio side, read the episodes on the visual side, or download the Colbyjack Sunday Reader issues 1 through 20 in your choice of either EPUB or Mobi. Firmware Hijacked and Proxy are both available in ebook versions from our store at shop.colbyjack.net, amazon.com, and Barnes & Noble. Just search for Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. I'm the only one. A complete audiobook version of both Firmware Hijacked and Proxy is available for download through our shop as well. If you don't need any stuff, but would like to support our work, drop on by Colbyjack.net and hit the pretty little donate button conveniently located on the right-hand side of the blog roll. If you're on a smaller screen, the button will be found at the bottom of the page. Firmware Proxy is released under a Creative Commons, non-commercial, attribution, share-alike 3.0 license. Do what you want with it, just don't sell it and always tell people where it came from. If you received this from a friend and want more information about Colbyjack.net and our split personality website, just drop on over to Colbyjack.net and select either the audio or visual side. The audio side carries our podcast, while the visual side carries our writings. Whichever side catches your fancy is fine with us. We're of two minds about the whole thing anyway. If you want to get social with me, I do mostly Twitter. So if you do the tweets and want to follow me, I'm Colbytrax. Spelled the same as above, Colbytrax. We could sing that all night long. Thank you once again and have a wonderful week.